It's a great theory for people to basically understand communication in terms of relationships, meaning that we, particularly in college settings, are very familiar with like fraternities, sororities, sports teams, and so there's a sense of how they dress, how they act, how they behave, and if you're not part of those, people make assumptions or ideas about them, which aren't necessarily true, aren't necessarily representative of who they are or what they're about, but because of setting, appearance, and how they dress, we think of them as a front stage. But until we get involved with groups like a fraternity or sorority, church group, whatever it may be, we don't really know the backstage or what else is going on. So the theory is great for explaining how people look at one another, and also, more importantly, it's a great criticism tool to be used for how politicians, for instance, you know, the old adage is politicians will shake hands and kiss babies. And so the whole movie, the recent movie with The Campaign, totally made fun of that, right? I'm going to kiss that baby, and he ends up punching the baby, right? That's a funny part of the movie, but it's all about front stage. He's just doing it to get a vote, but do we really know why they want to run or what's important to them?
Okay.
Yes, I actually, in my rhetoric and argumentation class, teach front stage versus backstage, that how one makes an argument and the ways in which they engage in rhetoric deals with their appearance, the settings, and the mannerisms which they enact, which is Goffman's front stage, while at the same time we're not always have access to people's backstage, meaning how they think, how they feel, how they behave. We can get that from how they use rhetoric and argumentation, but we use front stage and backstage in everyday aspects of our life, and I also teach it as part of my class. Not completely. I understand that people think that it's just a metaphor, that they use, you know, theater as a metaphor, kind of Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, we're nothing but actors in it. But it really does play out as to how we think and how we behave. One criticism that does need to be made is there's really a lack of explanation of culture, cultural influences and traditions that shape what our front stage is versus what our backstage is. So I would agree that maybe the theater metaphor doesn't help to explain maybe those influences, but it is a pretty accurate representation as to how people think about others and view themselves.
I mean, the whole idea that there's a real me inside who's the authentic, true me, and then there's the outer fake persona that I have to wear a mask and pretend to be a certain kind of person, it really didn't begin to emerge until the 17th and 18th centuries. This is really a product of the Protestant Reformation, when Luther basically says the real you is the you that's inside, and the fake you is the you that does the good works and all of these other things. So all that matters is the commitment to the real you. But what this does is it creates the impression that our social life is fake, and that we're all wearing masks in our everyday lives, and we can't actually get to the real person. And that wasn't a problem for the Greeks, that wasn't a problem during the Middle Ages, because the real self, if there is such a thing, was already bound up in a community. And so your social roles, the persona of the waitress or the butcher or the craftsman, wasn't separated from the real person. So that distinction that becomes epidemic in modernity between private and public is really a modern experience. It's not something that was part of early Western culture. And so what Goffman's saying, I think, is absolutely right. We do have this tension between the masks and personas that we adopt in our everyday lives versus the real needs and desires that we have in our inner self. But that itself is a predicament of modernity. And Goffman knows this, by the way. He's a great sociologist who knows the history of Western culture very well. And so it kind of it reminds us to think, where did this come from? Why do we think this way? Why do we see ourselves putting on these masks at parties and social events and pretending to be happy when actually we're not, or pretending to be charismatic and powerful when actually we don't feel that way? Why can't we be just who we are? And of course that begs the question, who is the real me anyway? Oh, absolutely. I use it in my classes all the time. I mean, this is the whole distinction between the I-it and the I-you relation, that in my everyday encounters with you, I'm very manipulative and instrumental. I use you as a means to my ends, which is good student evaluations and praise and so on. And you do the same thing with me. You manipulate your persona as a good student, as someone that's engaged and excited about the material, to create positive feelings and impressions for me, so that they then are reflected on my grading of you at the end of the semester. I don't agree with those. They're not. I don't think they're speculative at all. In fact, they're manifest in everyday human interaction. I mean, we all know when we say to ourselves, "Put on a face, put on that happy face, put on your business face. You're getting ready to go to a job interview." All of that is demonstrably true. I mean, we do this all the time. Get ourselves ready for a particular event or a particular encounter. All of that is a manifestation of that dramaturgical, is that the phrase, dramaturgical account that Goffman's talking about. So I don't think it lacks clarity at all. I mean, I think it's a product of being a good sociologist. If you just pay attention to the way you live in your everyday life, you'll see it on display constantly, right? It's on display right now, right? I mean, here we are, right? I'm conveying professorship, right? Sitting in my office chair and you know, spouting off about great American sociologists, and you're taking notes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm putting on a show right now, and so that's evidence. That's empirical evidence that the Goffman was right. That doesn't seem to lack clarity at all.